Hi, Dinara.
Hi, James.
So welcome back, everybody. And we're going to be looking at a new tense today, which is the past perfect continuous. I have to do. Okay. To study this example situation, so we got yesterday morning. Yesterday morning, I got up and looked out of the window. The sun was shining, but the ground was very wet. It had been raining. It was not raining when I looked out of the window. The sun was shining, but it had been raining before. So had been, and then the verb plus ing, is the past perfect continuous. So, some examples are I, we, you, they had been doing, working, playing, etc. Same with he, she, it. And just remember the contractions: I'd, he'd, she'd, it'd, you'd, we'd, they'd. Now, if we look at some more examples, my hands were dirty because I'd been repairing my bike. So my hands were dirty because I've been repairing my bike. So that means that was something that you'd been doing up until that point in the past that you'd started talking about, i.e. the hands being dirty. Okay. Tom was tired when he got home. He'd been working hard all day. Yeah, exactly. It's the same. I went to Madrid a few years ago and stayed with a friend of mine. She hadn't been living there very long, but she knew the city very well. So you can say that something had been happening before something else happened. So we've been playing tennis for about an hour when it started to rain heavily.
Okay, before we start comparing have been, so present perfect continuous and past perfect continuous, could you please remind to our students that, for example, I'd love to go to hear contractions?
Yes, that's contraction. That's contraction, and it's would. Just remember that with the contractions where they have two different options, i.e. the ud contraction as contraction. These two basically, based on the context which one is going to be. So I'd love to go to the Congo. That would be would, because it's I would love, not I had love. So whereas, oh no, I'd been there before. That's I had been, or he'd been listening to music before you came. So that's had. So we know from the context and what we know from the context and what the other words are, which one it's going to be. But you need to get used to the contractions because they are the norm over 90% of the time in spoken English. So the only exceptions is really when we want to stress things, or if you want, or if you want to give a short answer to certain questions. Had you been to Paris before? Yes, I had. I wouldn't say yes, I'd. So that had you been to Paris before that? So I wouldn't say yes, I'd. So yes, I had. Or no, I hadn't. So they are used the vast majority of the time, and they're very, very common in English.
Okay, so
let's continue with the comparison then.
Okay. So I wanted to say that auxiliaries, they really give us quite a bit of information about the context. We need to be very attentive for them. Yes,
yeah.
And
Exactly. And just remember that, for your perfect tenses, you're going to be using have as an auxiliary. And that's whether it's the past perfect simple, past perfect continuous, present perfect simple, present perfect continuous. It's the, in the perfect tenses, have is the main auxiliary. Okay? Whereas for simple tenses, it's do. And then for future tenses, it's will. So as in, and for present continuous or, present continuous, it's going to be. So you know this, so this all depends on which tense you're talking about. But we have the different auxiliaries, but they give a lot of information. Exactly. Let's compare the present perfect continuous and the past perfect continuous. So have been doing. So present perfect continuous, you're including the starting point in the past, and it continues and is still ongoing now because it's present, remember. Whereas the past perfect continuous, it was something that was ongoing from a deeper point in the past, but then it stopped at a more recent point in the past. Okay, so it's not ongoing now. Okay, there's always like a reference point of where the stop is. So if we look at these two examples, I hope the bus comes soon. I've been waiting for 20 minutes. The bus isn't there yet. You know, so far I've been here for 20 minutes. So I've been waiting for 20 minutes. Okay. Whereas if we look at the other sentence about the bus, at last the bus came. I've been waiting for 20 minutes. So that's before the bus came. So the bus coming, regardless of whether that is 30 seconds ago or 6 hours ago, the bus coming is the end point in the past that we're discussing. And we're talking about something that you were in the middle of doing before that. You know. So in other words, waiting. So that's the difference. So again, it's similar to that distinction between the present perfect simple and the past simple. If you say, I've lost my keys, that means I don't have my keys. If you say, I lost my keys, it means you probably have them again because you found them at some point. You know, it's similar here as well. So let's look at the next one. James is out of breath. He's been running. Remember that contraction is he has been. He's been. Is, it's has. We know that from the context. So James is out of breath. He's out of breath now. And the reason for that is the activity he's just been doing. So whereas the other example, James was out of breath, he'd been running, that one is, you can tell with this one that it's a little bit, it's, you know, based in the past. So James was out of breath. We don't have a reference when that was. That could have been an hour ago. It could have been 3 weeks ago or 6 months ago or whatever. But that's the information that we have. James was out of breath. He'd been running. Let's have a look at the next one. So past continuous versus past perfect continuous. It wasn't raining when we went out. The sun was shining, but it had been raining. So the ground was wet. So you can see the past continuous, it's this background tense, okay? So it wasn't raining when we went out. So when we went out, that was not something that was that was happening at that point. The sun was shining, so it started before and it continued afterwards, but it had been raining. But up until that point, or some point earlier, it had been raining. So the ground was wet. Then Catherine was lying on the sofa. So she started before this particular snapshot. She probably continued afterwards. She was tired because she'd been working hard. But before that moment, that's what she had been doing. So some verbs, for example, no, are not normally used in continuous forms. So remember, it's stative verbs. We were good friends. We had known each other for years. You couldn't say we had been knowing each other for years. A few years ago, Lisa cut her hair really short. I was surprised because she'd always had long hair, not always been having, because her hair is, you know, as in it's a state, you know, so it has a state. It's not an action, so it's just there. You know, whereas the cut hair, yeah, you could use that in a continuous sense. You know, so she'd been cutting hair for years until she decided to become a product owner or whatever, so you could absolutely use it for cut, but not for describing what hair someone has, because that's a state. Okay.
I see. So there is interesting exercise 16.3. Let's complete several tasks, for example. So here we need to choose the right one. At the end of our journey, we were extremely tired. So obviously here we're using past simple. And let's see what to choose in the second sentence. We were traveling. We'd been traveling for more than 24 hours. Obviously, they were tired is past simple, and here we need to. They were doing something before that, and we here use past perfect continuous. We'd been traveling for more than 24 hours, and obviously, some of them you still question inside your head. Why don't we use here? We'd traveled. Yeah, we had traveled for more than 24 hours. No, incorrect, because here we want to show that we were doing something before past simple for quite some time.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly. That's right. So it does provide a lot more. So it does provide. It also provides a little more strength to use the past perfect continuous than the past perfect simple there. So you're really emphasizing that something had been in progress for a while before a certain point in the past.
Before past simple action, yeah, let's call it.
Yes, exactly.
James was on his hands and knees on the floor. Past simple again. He'd been no. I would use he was looking for his contact lens.
Mm-hmm. Well, which one is this? Sorry.
I would choose.
16.
He was looking, for his contact lens.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what was the first part of it again? Sorry.
James was on his hands and knees on the floor.
He was looking for his contact lens. Right. Okay. So now the question is: has he just found the contact lens, or is he still looking?
We don't know.
So if we don't know, and we assume that he's still looking, then we would say James was looking for his contact lens. Okay, so that's if he's still looking. So if he'd stopped, so if he'd literally just found it, and somebody walked in, for example, and then they saw him on his hands and knees on the floor, thinking, "What's happening?" Well, then James had been looking for his contact lens.
Yes, and it's correct. He was looking. And let me remind you that you can check your answers. All the answers are in the end of this book. And please, with tenses, some things, even if you don't understand, it's pure memorization. And later on, you will catch through context, through speaking. Try to watch films in English, and what also helps, change your phone's language, your smartphone's language to English. Switch, because for example, that's what I did now with Spanish. What I have done with Spanish, and it really helps to learn more vocabulary.
So it's just basically whenever you are confronted with another language, it helps. So the more that you're confronted by it and the more surrounded by it, then the more helpful it is. So if you change, you can change all sorts of things to different languages if you want to practice.
Yeah. For example, I've never lived in English-speaking countries. Never. So this level of English I have only thankfully to watching films. So what I did, you can do the same. I watched. So I have several. So I have favorite films. I watched them with Russian subtitles, and then with English subtitles, and then with no subtitles. The same film.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. So, because the problem is obviously when you watch it with the Russian subtitles, you're more likely to focus on the subtitles.
Yes.
So I do that with, generally speaking, how it works for me is German I watch without subtitles usually. So sometimes I watch them with German subtitles if I'm feeling lazy. But French I tend to watch with French subtitles. In Spanish, if I'm feeling very brave, I'll watch it. If I'm feeling brave, I'll watch it with Spanish subtitles. And but usually at the moment I'm still on the English subtitles there, but I attempt to not look at the subtitles as much as possible.
True, and so that is why it's very important to watch your favorite film, because you already familiar with dialogues in your language, for example, in my case in Russian. And after, very interesting fact, after I started watching films without dubbed voice, dubbed translation,
Yeah.
I realized that there is massive difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
And since then, I cannot watch films with dubbed translation.
I can't take it. I can't either. I really hate it. So, because I keep getting distracted by the fact that the lips and the mouth, the lips and the words, are not moving at the same time, so I keep, because when you're watching, when you're talking to somebody, you're not just listening to words back and forth. There's a lot of non-verbal communication that goes in as well. So there's things like, there's seeing things, that gestures in the face and things like that, and paying attention to those. And so if the facial movements are not matching what's being said, it's quite, it's that sort of uncanny valley, we call it, the uncanny valley, where it's sort of near to correct, but it's not quite, but it's because it's near and not there, it's a little bit off-putting, in much the same way that very realistic dolls look really creepy, so
yes.
So that we call the uncanny valley effect, so the uncanny valley effect. It's
Yes, so even, for example, if the language I don't know, for example, Japanese, I prefer watching actors speaking Japanese with whatever subtitles I can find.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm quite a fan of certain K-dramas at the moment. So I can't
really?
any Korean. Well, as in, so I've watched, so a couple of them. All of Us Are Dead. That was great. Yeah. So Kingdom was amazing as well. So there's a slight zombie theme there. I will get around to a Squid Game at some point, but obviously I can't speak any Korean, but it's just it's not the same to listen to it in English. So I'd much rather listen to it in Korean with English subtitles.
I'll be honest. Why I do not watch, especially Korean films. I find very strange to look at actors who had so much plastic surgery that they're not recognizable. And I find it's something destructive to me, and I just because I see this because I'm Asian myself, and I just don't know. It's like I don't understand the psychology behind it.
Well, there's a lot of pressure. I mean, that they're sort of I think Korea is one of the cosmetic surgery, the plastic surgery capitals of the world, as in so it is really quite extreme. So I do understand where you're coming from on that. So it can look very off-putting sometimes. Yeah.
Chinese, they're catching up with this, of course, but I think first who started in Asia, it's obviously Japanese. So, and I don't know how to explain.
Exactly. Well, but yeah, I think that the ones that I tend to watch, as in I don't really notice it that much because most of my favorites are the zombie ones. The ones focused around zombies. But so as in, but they do. It is interesting how much they're they very successfully marketed parts of their culture in the last decade or so. So K-pop, K-drama, K-film, K-cinema. It's interesting, but the art scene's really bloomed there in the last few years.
Yes, because they put the government helps, let's say, financially with that, and
yeah, of course.
Obviously, it's the influence of the US. Yeah. Okay, and again, let's repeat that. Try to watch everything. So films in English with English subtitles, and later on without subtitles. So faster you will learn to hear what people say, faster you'll be able to speak English fluently without translating from your language to English. So, for example, when I speak English, I stopped translating. I think I stopped translating a long time ago, yeah. So, from Russian or from Yeah, I'll be honest, from Russian, not from Kazakh.
Okay.
In the past, yeah. So pretty clear to me, but obviously from after a lot of practice and to practice grammar, you can download pretty good applications. As I remember, English Grammar in Use, they even have their own application. See you in our next episodes, and thanks to everyone who supports our channel in any way, through likes, through sharing videos, and through sending us money. See you. Bye, guys.
See you. Bye-bye.